Welcome to the Coliving with PadSplit podcast, where we talk to successful PadSplit investors and have them share their secrets to success, not only in PadSplit, but in other facets of real estate. This podcast will help you expedite your learning to be a successful investor in the co-living space. We are your hosts, Ray and Orianna Nunez. Show us some love by subscribing and sharing so we can continue to bring on amazing guests. Wow. This episode is juicy.
It's different.
It's different. It's intimate. It's private.
This couch is empty, and it's empty for a reason.
We're interviewing each other on this one.
And we're about to find out a lot of behind the scenes.
We know our story, but you don't. So you want to tune into this one. You want to hear this one out. We're going to share how we started in real estate, how we work together, what challenges did we face. Just listen to it.
I feel like there's a lot of gems. There's a lot of ranting. There's information on wholesaling, acquisitions, sales, working with your spouse, and also working towards building a portfolio. But we spill the beans in this episode, so stay tuned to the newest episode.
Yes, guys. And like always, like, share, subscribe, comment. Tag us everywhere in social media. Please allow us to spread the word, guys. You help us grow when you do all those small things for us that cost nothing. So stick around, listen to this one, listen to the show. Nothing. Enjoy yourself. See you later. Well, we've been talking about doing a podcast episode where we interview each other. You get to know us better. You get to hear about our personal story, how we started in real estate and all that jazz. So we wanted to get a little bit up close and personal with you all, and we're excited to share more about us. We are hosting the show, but, we want to allow you to get to know your host.
Of course.
And our own journey. So we're excited to do this one. I'm a little nervous, but excited at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that you know us for separate different titles. We're co-hosts of the Coliving with PadSplit podcast. We interview successful investors that are PadSplit hosts. We are account executives for PadSplit.
Right.
And we also wholesaled and are realtors. But behind all of that, what's our story? What's our credibility? What do we have and what have we gone through? I think it's time to obviously peek behind the curtain so that we can be able to be vulnerable a little bit and give you guys an episode that is dedicated to our journey.
Let's do this one.
Excited.
My love, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, baby. Welcome.
Well, I'm excited to have you here.
That's weird. But so what we're going to do is divide this in halvesies, and then, hopefully maybe speed around it towards the tail end. We have our phones out because it's some questions that, we might feel like we might want to ask or expand on ones that just come organically. But with that being said, excited to do this, excited to interview you, and excited to hear, share your story.
I'm excited too. Let's start with you. So what really drew you into the real estate industry? Because you started, I know you've done some real estate or had some proximity to the industry, but you really started this in 2015. Yep. So what kind of drew you into the industry?
So being tired of working not real estate, but retail for a very long time, doing it from like 2004 all the way up to 2014, 15, having a sales job that kind of gave me the taste of commissions and understanding that, hey, I want to do something better for my life and change my family's trajectory. So I did what any old person who wants to get into real estate wants to do: wholesale. And so
Wholesaling.
I educated myself, like many of people who watch this show and are in our world. You watch YouTube videos, World Star videos, or just any type of video that can teach you on how to make money with as little money down as possible. And so the concept of being able to get into real estate and make crazy commissions, make $50,000 was appealing.
Right. We saw so many people posting on Facebook, Instagram, back in the day.
Yep.
I just made 50 grand, 40 grand, 30 grand. We're like, oh, I want that.
Yep. So that got me into real estate, and I kind of dragged you into that part of that world. So that got me into real estate, essentially speaking. I mean, that was my earliest gateway entry into the business. Is I have no money. At the moment I had $10,000 to $15,000.
No, you did some savings.
Yeah, I did save money. I did leave my job, and I did do it for a year. I was successful at getting phone calls. I didn't want to pay for a mentor. So
Why?
I paid the other way, which is through experience.
Why did you not want to be for a mentor?
Because scarcity mindset at that time.
Okay.
I will say that if you have like $15,000 and you hear how expensive it is to do mailers, you don't want to allocate that money necessarily to a mentor that's going to take 10,000 of that. So
Got it.
that was the mindset then.
Yeah.
If I took the Alex Casado approach, should have probably spent the $10,000 in, education.
Yeah. No, valid. So then after that, you basically started your real estate career with an independent wholesale company.
I did.
How did that shape your career? How did that shape you as an entrepreneur and as a wholesaler?
It helped build character. So that wholesale operation that had a couple different sales agents and a couple different acquisition agents already established. They were already good at what they were doing. They were starting too.
So when you got in, how many people were on the team?
It was like a 5 or 6 person team.
Okay,
and
so
a broker.
it was a small team.
Yeah, it was like 2 acquisition agents and 3 other agents that were selling.
And what did you have to do when you went in? Like, what was your role?
Girl, I was dropping signs. I was submitting offers. I was on the dialer. I was the dialer guy. So if you're the dialer person, you're either, a foreigner or you're the person that's in the bottom of the totem pole in the office. So I was the low-key person that they didn't want to get a license immediately because they wanted me to do a lot of the admin stuff in that office to help build character. But at the end of the day, it was a character building experience. It did tear apart your ego. Dropping signs at night at different hours, middle of the day, to try to get more buyers and building your list. And then as you're, doing sales, losing on that sale opportunity because other people sold it faster, or even not having a buyer and having to specifically drop a sign for that house and then show that house even after it's sold so that you can go ahead and, build out that buyer's list.
Right.
It was character building.
It really was. And like, I remember, you started, of course, before me, but you didn't really produce an income for a while. And I'm talking about months, so it was kind of just the strength of the dream. We know that the result is coming, but it's not an instant result.
My first paycheck went to a Honda Accord.
You said I needed a car. Your car was
I needed a better car, but I remember the struggle, and for a long time I didn't get any sales. But when you turn that corner,
right.
You have buyers, you're going, you know how to pitch. It kind of comes together.
You've been building this momentum, and it's a snowball effect.
Yep.
You got to that point, and now everything just flows more naturally.
Yep.
But it took a while to get there.
It took a very long time.
Every step of it was worth it, though.
And nothing ever comes like given to you. There's fake it till you make it. I get it. But I don't think anything that we've done was fake it till you make it. Cause we've definitely, we went from independent to wholesale operation to another wholesale operation that was acquired, that acquired the one that we were at. And again, it was started from the bottom of the totem pole all over again. So,
right. We went from a very small operation into a way bigger one. Bigger one, we're talking about like it was a 20 plus people operation versus like a 6 people operation. We were a family. And then it became a lot more competitive. It became, you needed to just kind of add more tools under your belt in order for you to become successful, because now there was not 2-3 sales agents. Now you had 10 people trying to sell the same deal. And maybe there was really 20 buyers at that moment for that specific property.
Yep. And we're talking about when properties were like $90,000, but still relative, because $90,000 at that time was expensive in that
Correct.
market.
Correct.
But anything that was a flip sold immediately. No one wanted to buy a rental at the time, and Airbnb really wasn't prevalent, so it wasn't a thing that people wanted to run comps on. And
Or if it was, but it was still a little bit strange.
It's hard to run comps.
Yeah.
You have to factor in the occupancy. You have to, and then that's at a lower percent. So ultimately, like it was a burger and fry recipe, as what they called it back then. Stick to the burger and fry recipe. Stick to the basics.
If it's working, don't
Yeah,
exactly. Don't fix it. So how long were you wholesaling for? How long was kind of the stage of your career?
Well, wholesaling since 2015 to 2000, I would say 21.
And then what happened after?
After
What came next?
Well, after that operation, felt burnout, wanted to do my own thing. So we did our own thing independently. It wasn't meant to be a big office or something like that, but it was our way of expanding our entrepreneurial spirit to do our own stuff.
Yeah.
Partnerships don't always work out, and life happens. So that got shut somewhere around 2021. And I believe I took an in-between job. I might have sold some sneakers and I tried to do the whole sneaker flipping thing for a second.
Yeah, it worked.
It did work.
You were very successful at it.
But then PadSplit happened.
PadSplit came along.
PadSplit came along. So PadSplit had an advertisement. People ask, how do you get into PadSplit? LinkedIn, and also like job websites. So Florida account executive was the term. There were only 3 people in the company, in my department.
That's crazy.
So instead of having...
That was how long ago?
2021. So
3 years.
3 years. So yeah, I mean...
Wow, so much has changed in just 3 years. That's... Yep. Wow.
Yep.
So you came along with PadSplit as salesperson number 3, right?
Literally, yep, for the state.
And you were in the state of Florida, and that was what you were focusing on.
100%. It was...
How did you shape and shift that market? It was not a market. You were creating a market.
Exactly.
Because there was nothing before you. You were the person that was molding this market. What did you do?
So some of the stuff that we did early on was inbound calls were coming in, and then they were gathering data, and then they were doing outreach. And my job was to outreach virtually. And do virtual meetings, set up video calls, and then do a set of video calls.
Also, for context, remember, COVID just happened. So the world as a whole is still very virtual. Everything is still, people are still uncomfortable with in-person meetings. People are still like, no, I'm going to stay at home. We're still transitioning through that process. So you were doing a lot of virtual.
Yeah, that's what my role is supposed to be, which is virtual. Yeah. But then, I got the itch. I was sucking at what I was doing. It's hard to build a community. It's hard to build a market just doing it over the phone and on video. So, yeah, I started to jump into different markets. We started off with Jacksonville and Tampa. Mm-hmm. Orlando wasn't a thing. Miami wasn't a thing. So with Jacksonville, jumped in, joined the RIA, showed up to the RIA. Met other groups, connected all those groups, built relationships, helped grow out individual portfolios of larger investors, and then continue to do that throughout that year. Increased weekly rates from like 130 to close to 200 a week. Did the same thing in Tampa, grew that market out as well.
That's pretty impressive that you opened so many different cities within an entire state.
Yeah,
like I don't even. How did you manage that? There
wasn't an option. Like honestly, back then it was just one person in Texas. It was one person in Atlanta, and it was me. Well, no, technically, when I got hired, Shawnee joined. So Shawnee was the second person in Georgia,
But she was more partnerships.
Correct.
Not necessarily that same role.
Correct. So, yeah, it was laying the groundwork and building it out and making the relationships and attending these groups and teaching investors on it. And, that was the role ultimately.
That's honestly very impressive. From a startup world where nothing is built, there's no such thing as a roadmap. It's trial and error. We'll figure it out as we go. It's gotta keep trying. We cannot tell you how to do it. We hired you so you can guide us, figure this road and this map out.
That was literally the thing that Joel told me, is that we hired you because you have an entrepreneurial background. So go figure this out and grow this out. Right. And real estate, so do what you need to do in these markets. So then after, going to, in-market events, that then became a concept that was normal within PadSplit. It's, hey, now everyone's an expert. Now everyone goes into market. Now everybody sets up meetings. Now everybody does this. But then that came from, obviously me going into these markets and building that out.
And you were trying to be also innovative because you're like, well, the other people that are already in the company are doing this.
I suck compared to Blake at that moment.
No, I know, I get it, but
but that's what she was really good at, was that component of it.
I know that, but what I'm saying is, like, you understand that wasn't your forte, so you had to innovate and create something different.
Correct.
Because everyone's strengths are different.
Correct.
Right? So, and you're such a charming, beautiful human. But that helped a lot, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that really helped building the relationships. And that's what I'm kind of known for, is the relationship person. Like, hey, Ray comes in, builds relationships and builds strong relationships, and then people continue to go forward and buy more properties. But,
right.
I think more than that, it's the real estate background. It's the customer service background from my retail experience. And so the combination of customer service plus actually being an investor and an expert in the field and being able to continue to build those relationships helps strengthen not just relationships, but it helps build on what investors are doing. Like, my investors go from 0 properties to, 100 units. I had one person that goes from 1 property to 66 properties and 350 doors on the platform when he was hesitant on even getting on the platform.
So what's your biggest success story that you can share with our audience about, being within PadSplit as an account executive for the state of Florida?
I think my biggest success ultimately is that thing that you mentioned. I mean, I'll save the story on growing a portfolio of 47 doors of our own. But that, I feel, is more of our personal success. So as an account executive, aka salesperson, that jumped into a market and didn't have anyone that did anything before me.
Well, you didn't jump into a market, you created the market.
100%. No, but the market of Florida.
Yeah.
Just the state of Florida. Yeah. Think of like a person jump into the state of Florida and having to talk to people brand new that are very big on fix and flips, very big on Airbnbs. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks that this is the thing that, they're going to continue on, and it's a parade, and it's exciting to do that exit strategy. And then, now today, 2024, you walk in, everyone's an expert. Everyone knows PadSplit to some degree. Everyone's excited for it. And, they're all teaching, the co-living model. Mm-hmm. But what I feel like one of my biggest accomplishments are, I was the first person that walked into the door and talked about PadSplit, even when it wasn't fun to do it. And there were early adapters that jumped onto the PadSplit wagon. But before a community ever supported that concept, I was there banging that drum. And I did it for 5 markets. And Jacksonville is the strongest market in the state of Florida.
And you built that market.
I built that market. And then Tampa also.
You built that
market. Another market that is top 3 in the company. And I built that. And then Orlando, we're building that market. And then in Miami, we started that market. So with that being said, my biggest achievement is that I was able to help so many investors in a pivotal moment, and vendors that are obviously selling their concept of being professionals in PadSplit. And I was a start for a lot of those people. So whoever a lot of people consider professionals today, I was a start for that. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that I was a seed to some degree of the concept of what bloomed today.
And this is just the beginning.
100%.
Which is super exciting. We're just getting started. Yeah, you had the challenge of facing all the naysayers, all the skepticals, all the people that really were like, it's not going to work. That is insane. That's ridiculous. And you overcame all those challenges. I mean, we're still facing them every day.
Yeah, there's challenges.
Right? But the difference is we don't get as much no's as maybe any other investment would do, I would say. We don't get as much no's. We get we'll talk later. Mm-hmm. Not now. But it's not like that's absolutely insane. Some people don't see themselves living in a co-living path, so they don't gotta want to put themselves in investing in that. But to me, they're not real investors. Because an investor does not analyze a property seeing themselves necessarily living in that house, because they are not necessarily the demographic they're going for, unless it's, high-end luxury real estate or something like that. But it's a little bit different. So those people that are constantly like, I would never, you're right, you wouldn't. This is not necessarily for you. You're not the demographic for it. Mm-hmm. But it's impressive what you've accomplished. I obviously have looked at your career and your journey, and I fully admire what you've built.
Thank you, baby.
I love everything that you've accomplished. You're awesome.
Appreciate it, babe.
Of course. Also, what do you think? How do you perceive PadSplit growing? How do you see co-living growing? What do you see this in the future?
Well, I mean, I've seen crazy jumps. Our systems have changed. Our training has changed. The way we hire has changed. The way that the people being hired, what they've come out and have done and said have all changed. And so our numbers are crazy. Like when I started, the main focus obviously is activations and turning on properties. But, we were celebrating letters of intent at the time.
Wow.
Because we weren't activating enough. There was only like one person that was doing activations on the whole team. Now we're doing record-breaking, 500 units, 600 units on a week, and some crazy numbers. So, and our numbers are, our intent is to double up. We're 13,000 units right now. We're attempting to hit somewhere around 24. So it's like PadSplit in its growth. Yeah, we're going to be in more cities. We're going to activate more cities. We're going to have more salespeople in your towns. We're going to continue to run the same, sales play where, we educate the masses. And as we educate the masses, the first movers are going to come, and then you're going to have the second movers and the third movers. Mm-hmm. And ultimately it's going to, I feel, be an exit strategy where investors are going to look at it and say, you know what, today, what PadSplit is a lot easier than what PadSplit was going back a few years for an investor. Mm-hmm. But I think it'd be easier for an investor to do co-living, a year or two down the line, because we continually, day over day, week over week, change what the support and the different technology behind, this, what we provide to investors, so that we're more insightful. We give more data. We learn more things faster than an individual could that's teaching you co-living in your market. So I feel like PadSplit will be something that looks more like McDonald's than it does, some crazy far out concept that's out here and strange. I think it'd be way more common and a lot more easier for an investor to jump into co-living.
And I think also part of that is, I say this to my investors all the time. I'm like, PadSplit is not creating a new wheel. we are just centralizing things for investors because people have been renting by the room for years, decades. Like this is not new.
Yeah.
Right.
Very
So
true.
when people are like, oh my God, that's crazy. No, it's not crazy. It's incredible that PadSplit has been able to centralize this, systemize things, streamline so much of the process for the investor, allowing the investor to be able to scale at a faster rate because everything that PadSplit has been setting up for them. It's a
100%
So we're
facts.
not recreating anything.
We're making the wheels smoother,
That's right.
ultimately. And it might not be made of rock or rubber by the time we're done. It's going to be some other stuff. But yeah, we this is the fastest way to financial freedom.
Right.
The whole concept of long term,
As an investor,
100%.
all the way, that doesn't necessarily require tons of experience or like every time I keep hearing, real estate people become millionaires because that's a true story. A lot of these were holding real estate.
You need a whole lot of holding doing that long term.
Yeah, and financially, that is not as achievable as it sounds.
Nope.
Right?
Because the gameplay is not what you're earning; it's the appreciation ultimately.
And that's a long-term game, and not everybody necessarily is able to sustain that long-term game about like 10, 15, 20 years in the game.
I agree. Yeah, no, we watch videos where we're sitting down and I'm teaching, like earlier PadSplit, and I'm educating people on renting by the room and getting multifamily returns on single family assets. And I'm watching other people teach on how buying rental property and making $200, $300 net a month is the way to financial freedom, or short-term rentals, Airbnb or VRBO, making you money. But it's just like, you kind of shake your head, you move forward, and you continue just educate that market. But that the thing that you're teaching is a thing that could be used across, different types of exit strategies. Like today, we're seeing people who do fix and flips convert their stale flips into PadSplits.
Right.
Airbnb hosts that see less occupancy year over year, month over month, convert to PadSplit. Long-term buy and hold, you're already sitting on something that's a 4.2. You rent by the room, you could already be making $3,000 a month on that same property without even adding a room.
Right.
So, I mean, is every property going to be a PadSplit? No.
Not every property is a fit for PadSplit.
But there's definitely more of a need for workforce housing than there is for vacation rentals, because the competition alone on vacation rentals is just way higher. And I would probably rather at this point stay at a hotel than Airbnb, just for fees and amenities. So
I know. I remember when we started traveling, probably eight plus years ago. I was Airbnb-ing everything, and we were staying at tons of Airbnbs. We stayed at Airbnbs in California, in New
fees
York.
were less.
Oh my gosh. And we loved that experience of, being able to be at someone else's home. And now when we travel, we compare prices between what an Airbnb is for two people that are traveling in a hotel. And we pick hotels. First and foremost, they're doing cleaning. They're doing my bed. Some hotels have breakfast included. So a lot of more things of my experience in a stay are kind of better with the hotels with Airbnbs, and it doesn't make sense financially for us. Now, bigger parties, I would say certainly it makes more sense with, short-term rental spaces, but for us,
or overseas travels.
I agree. It did, but for us, we've seen tons of success and financial benefit at staying at hotels. Also, we're racking points.
We're also, and we're not doing a staycation in an Airbnb, and it's not to rag on Airbnb. It's just logically think about it. Like, I'm not gonna stay in a house by a potential host that doesn't operate their house well, and so there's a lot of people. And the way I look at it is, and it comes back down to PadSplit. Not everyone is an operator. There's investors and there's operators.
Right.
When it comes to Airbnb, not everyone's a good operator. There's people who throw money at the problem, understand the concept of Airbnb, but suck at management, suck at like cleaning up properties. They cut corners. They don't have a good operation, so they have to charge extra. Their occupancy sucks, so they have to charge extra. They have to charge fees. And so I don't want to be on the short end of that as a visitor. I'd rather stay at a hotel at the end of the day.
Right. I agree with you. So what is the advice that you would give an investor that is interested in PadSplit and co-living? Like someone that doesn't have really experience in the space, what advice would you give them?
I mean, if you want very blunt advice, I would say set yourself up for success. Reach out to us. You do not pay for mentorship with a mentor that has not gone through the process. You don't want to, like, if I want to go into a training camp, I'm not going to go through a training camp of a coach that's never coached a person that's never won a championship. Like, you don't do that anywhere. You don't go to a doctor that has no experience. And so with that being said, reach out to us. If you're a new investor, and any type of investor really, but new investor that wants to learn the process of real estate. PadSplit, we have our SOPs, we have our guidance, we have, the same common language. But behind that, if you need guidance in real estate, it becomes difficult just working with anyone from PadSplit. Not all of us have real estate experience.
I think something that we don't speak about enough is the fact that PadSplit teaches investors on how to do this. PadSplit is so invested into the investor and the success of that investor that they are giving the education to the investor from start to finish, so they don't have to go and find these resources outside of PadSplit.
Correct.
And investors don't see this value that PadSplit is giving. Like, cannot speak for any other company, right? But I don't know if Airbnb did that when they started. I don't know if HomeAware, if Airbnb did it. I don't know. I can't speak facts on it. But PadSplit literally trains us, account executives, to guide investors from A to Z for them to become successful PadSplit hosts and successful investors in the business. Now, of course, there are people that have experience outside of PadSplit and are educating investors. But I want you to understand that you can talk to us as account executives and we will guide you through the process. Of course, we will work as hard as you decide to work, right? Just like that coach. That coach is going to give you a hard time, but because you're showing up, because you're present, right? Or else it's kind of very similar. But yeah, that's something that is very underrated. The education that PadSplit provides for investors, because we want you guys to successfully onboard your properties.
Yeah. All sources of PadSplit information ultimately, generally at this stage of the company, come from PadSplit. Like, if you want data on occupancy, the source is PadSplit. The standards on PadSplit, you know where it comes from? PadSplit. The markets that we market to comes from PadSplit. So if someone has that information and they provide it, ultimately it still came from PadSplit. So PadSplit teaches you that for free. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, even within PadSplit, like, my bit of advice to investors would be to, again, reach out to us, Ray and Orianna, and we're able to then teach you a little bit of the pitfalls of what works in real estate and what doesn't work. Because guess what? Even with our PadSplits, we failed. Like, just because we're PadSplit, experts, and just because we have 47 doors, we still, in the process of doing this, because we bought 2 years ago at this point, there's stuff that we didn't do that operationally didn't make sense, or that we never checked, or we bought appliances that didn't work, but we didn't find out until we went live.
We have some stories.
So with that, we have gone through this process with 7 different houses of our own, and we're able to teach on that on a personal level where, hey, I wouldn't do this because of this, or hey, I would buy here because of this. And then add the layer of PadSplit experience going back for Orianna 2 years, this year, and 3 years for me, of market growth and market data and PadSplit do's and don'ts
Truly.
and stuff that we've learned from different investors as they scaled their portfolio.
Truly.
So my advice to a newbie investor would be align yourself with a PadSplit rep, obviously. Stay communicated with that PadSplit rep. And also, if you have an opportunity to work with us, obviously work with us. We're more than happy to educate. I think our strong suit is to educate and to pass our knowledge. And that knowledge comes with wholesale background, fix and flip background, rental background, and PadSplit experience background.
And we're dealing with investors because we've dealt with investors all along.
Correct.
What, this is kind of my last question for you, but we can expand, go from here. What are your long-term goals for your PadSplit properties in your real estate investments? I know this is kind of connected to us, because we have shared goals, but
I can reverse that question right afterwards so that we can then jump on you. But so my goal originally was, like every PadSplit host, I'm going to get 8 rooms. And I think that was just the concept because no one
you're saying
knew
per
different.
property?
Yeah, 8 rooms per property. I'm going to do 8 rooms per property. I'm going to do it as many times as I can. And that's the initial concept that people think when you start to think and you wrap your head around. I'm creating more bedrooms inside of my house. But quickly learned that, hey, if I'm successfully burn or if I'm successfully acquiring the right way, then I am able to buy more properties and not have to worry exclusively on it being 8 bedrooms. So the strategy has changed, but the number that I always wanted to hit was somewhere around 100 units. Around 100 units, what you'll get is a gross number of $1 million in a year. So my goal is to get to where we get $1 million a year by getting to 100 doors. And with 100 doors, we set our business up to be more automatic. Mm-hmm. At that point, then have someone that focuses on acquisitions and buys properties every other month, every 2 months. And we continue to scale that business while growing out other aspects of our portfolio, probably commercial, probably redevelopment, not necessarily multifamily unless it's like multifamily 20 units plus or something like that. But I think that that's what my goal or my passions are, is to like repurpose and to revitalize neighborhoods. But my PadSplit goal is to get to 100 doors initially and then put it on cruise control and then continue to grow that out into different markets. I don't have an end goal because if you're already making X amount of dollars and you already know what you're making per month and you know that to buy property, it takes you 2 months to buy a property, then every 2 months I'm buying a property. Then at some point, if it's every month I'm buying a property, then every month I'm buying a property. And at some point, it just continues.
Right.
From a person that grew up not having a guaranteed source of income in our family, in my family's background, I don't think I have a threshold of, hey, this is too much money. I want it to continue as long as possible.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for asking, baby. But so as my business partner and wife and partner in crime, what is your PadSplit goals with your portfolio and outside of that?
I definitely know how aligned our goals are. I mean, obviously we have discussions about this constantly, right? But our goal is to hit 100 doors within PadSplit. So that means that we're halfway through. Mm-hmm. We learned a lot about how quickly we scaled. So now we're going to kind of take a couple steps back on scaling so fast and do this a lot more meticulously and like not rushed, strategically growing at a steady pace. But the goal is to hit 100 doors. This will allow us to create a different type of net income where we can reinvest in other aspects. And I've always wanted to do commercial. Commercial is always something that I wanted to get into. Real estate commercial. It can be something, I mean, so many different avenues here, and I don't have enough knowledge on this, but it's a space that I would like to be a part of. Real estate is always going to be the avenue that I see myself in the long term. Either new construction, either owning car washes and owning some sort of real estate businesses, right, that own businesses and things like that, but it's still real estate connected. That's definitely where I see us going into. International real estate is something that is very apparent for us. I definitely know we are going to start investing internationally. This is for a lot of different reasons. I also see us potentially having some Airbnbs and diversifying our portfolio, because right now we have all our eggs in one basket that we truly believe in, and we're so bullish about it. But I think this will allow us to start diversifying. And that's where I see us heading into. And still continuing our journey of education, because we're both so passionate about educating others. We always did it by still educating those flippers on why this was a good deal. And then we're like, but we can do this at a bigger scale and help others. That's something that really resonates so deeply within me. How can I help others? Right? And how can I help others grow? Because I was in that space of not having knowledge, not having experience, not being in the right rooms with the right people, until I was able to get in those and just kind of, push me forward.
I love that. I agree. I missed out on the whole new construction bit, but I think that's also another wave of possibilities when expanding a PadSplit portfolio. Maybe at some point, instead of buying properties that need to be rehabbed, it's now buying plots of land to go ahead and do new construction,
right,
so that you can control the rehab process and it's more predictable.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I agree with you. So we'll go back, but we'll tread using my timeline a little bit. But what were your thoughts essentially when I wanted to get into wholesaling early on? Because what were you doing just before that?
I thought it was crazy.
What did you go to school for?
I come from a quote unquote traditional family, in the sense of like I'm an only child. So let's assume that there was a lot of pressure for me to become the child that made my parents proud. And the idea was for this to be more traditional. So engineering, doctor, lawyer, but a more traditional career. Right. So I am an immigrant in America. I was born and raised in Colombia, and my dream was always to study abroad. This was the dream that I always had. I wanted to leave home to gain world experience, world knowledge, and I always just had this thirst for world. And I just knew that I was in an amazing place, but I wanted more. So my parents supported that dream, and I came here to study a completely different thing, turn into business, because this was the compromise. I wanted music, but this was not kind of very untraditional for my family to be like, you're not going to make a living if you want to go and study music. That's just not going to be successful, right? It's the mindset of my parents at that time. So we compromised into more of a more traditional degree. So I did business. Then I went into corporate, right? So mom, dad, I made it. I am in a corporate job in America doing what I should do in paper. It wasn't satisfying. I felt like something was missing. It was not my calling. Like I knew it. I was doing this because this is what I've been taught. Society has been teaching us to do these type of steps, right? More traditional.
But what degree was it that you went for? Then what did you jump into?
It was business administration and a minor in finance. is exactly what I went for.
And so as I was starting off with wholesaling, you were starting off with?
So I actually was in real estate, and I was doing finance for a mortgage company in the secondary market. So I was locking the rates for individuals that were buying properties. So I was already in the real estate industry, but I was not necessarily in the right space of it. You know, so when you're like, I'm going to do wholesaling, I had no idea what that word was. When you hear wholesaling, you think of like maybe like you think of Costco, right? Like large pallets of a product of something that's being wholesale prices, but not necessarily real estate. I wasn't wired that way at that time. So to me, wholesale was a completely different thing. So wholesaling real estate, I'm like, what is this? And then you started showing me. I was skeptical because it felt like a big jump. Like that was a scary jump from me having a steady job, a steady income, benefits, all these things that look great on my resume. And you're like, let's do this together. And I was like, you're crazy. I was like, you can start this first and I'll follow through if this seems like something good. But I feel like internally, my entrepreneurial spirit that I always knew was there was also like so curious about it. And I wanted to also do it. So we both started preparing myself with savings for me to be able to do this jump. Because that meant us leaving everything behind. Not having any mattress or any cushion behind, right? And then you started, and after hours, I was kind of helping you writing letters and making some calls and doing some of this, and it was a different hustle, but it was also very gratifying. It was so gratifying because you knew that that was what you were putting into for yourself, not for anybody else.
When in the wholesaling process did you know you were really good, and what role was it that you were doing when you realized that you were really good? Because you were fantastic in sales and you were fantastic in acquisitions.
I definitely don't think I was fantastic in sales. I think I was good.
You were selling your own properties. And you were selling other people's properties.
I
and you were making the most in the
I think
office
at first I was definitely, I didn't have that experience. So it was not natural for me.
But what was your forte? Like, when did you notice, like, oh, I like this, and I'm good at real estate?
Acquiring was where I just thrived. I guess my analytical side just flourished. Understanding the numbers, the sweet spot of acquiring this property for the right amount for me to be able to sell it at the right price for the investor to profit, for me to profit, for everybody to win. And knowing how to analyze, and I think that's something that I love doing. I love negotiating. Negotiating is something that I just love doing. Maybe that power dynamic is something that I love. So negotiating was definitely my strength and my forte. And I also was able to transfer that into sales, negotiating with the investor, knowing when I could pull my strings and knowing when they were in that, power element. But I acquired everything in like 5-6 zip codes. And I was the only female, in a very male driven office. I think that was also not a challenge, but I had to prove myself. There was a lot more people that didn't necessarily thought that I would do it or that I would make it or that I had what it took. So I had to push myself even harder, but that motivated me. I always feel motivated by maybe some of them not believing in me, and that just drove me even harder for me to become such a successful acquisitions agent. And I loved it. It was so good for me.
So I'm going to tie a few threads in a couple questions from now. But in the hedge fund,
right?
You work for a hedge fund.
Yes.
What was your role within the hedge fund?
Right. So after wholesaling,
and when did you start?
After wholesaling, we definitely decided to take a different route. We enjoyed wholesaling, but we got a little just burnt out because we were working endlessly, and we wanted to change. I feel like it just became so repetitive for us, or for me specifically. Like, we wanted to change, and it just felt like it wasn't satisfying. That active income wasn't satisfying enough. We needed something that was more passive in a way. And I always had this vision of being part of a hedge fund. And I manifested it. And I started this job as a hedge fund acquisition manager in a way. So we had a goal of spending X amount of dollars a month in 2020, 2021, 2022 a little bit too. And I had to acquire almost 200 to 300 properties a month for this hedge fund. They were hungry. They were hungry, and they had a large amount of capital to deploy.
You struggled in that role, though, initially, I remember. But what kicked in, like, and what changed, like, because you did at some point rank high within that department of yours, right?
Yeah.
What correlations did you have from wholesaling that you can tie into hedge fund acquisitions?
People skills, negotiating skills, interpersonal connections, building connections, relationships, those pocket agents, those agents that I delivered a closing in a 2 to 3 week period notice, and now they knew that I was a verified buyer. So now they became part of my world, where they came to me before they even listed anything. So now I built a community around me proving myself first to them, so they would go back to me and bring me deals first before they would give it out to anybody else. I built a lot of great connections and relationships, right? Where, and again, they knew what I brought to the table. So now they were feeding me because they knew I was going to be the person that would take them to the closing table, and I would guarantee their clients to win with my closings because my buyer was a reliable client. And all of this just transition. Yeah, you're right. Everything just connected because we were already kind of doing this. We had to prove ourselves before people would believe in us. And this is exactly the same situation. I had to prove myself first, prove that I was real, that I was a true buyer, and then they came back the other way.
So you faced adversity,
Oof.
You fought through,
All the way,
and then you found success. You won any awards?
Yeah, you're right. I did. I forgot. Top real estate agent producer, over like 2 million sales. Is probably way more than that.
Some diamond something.
Yeah. Diamond sell real estate top producer. There was only like 20 agents in Florida, or no, that's not true. 20 agents in Orlando and Aura that achieved this award because of the volume of transactions that we were closing.
Well, not everybody was closing crazy amounts of deals. So I do want to specify that you found those results that got you those closings. Even though you were working with a fund that had crazy bankroll, not everybody was closing deals and making deals. So it was an achievement that you happen. Correct.
Yeah.
And then how did you transition into PadSplit?
The honest truth is the hedge fund was a dream that I had, and like I said, I manifested it because I just said I said it to you all a lot. I'm like, I want to work for a hedge fund. I want to work for a hedge fund. And it manifested itself. The doors opened, that opportunity came from my way, and it just really happened. But this was not satisfying anymore. It didn't feel like it was aligned with who I am as a person. It didn't feel like I was in the right space. I wasn't contributing positively towards people. It just didn't feel aligned. Okay. And then seeing you create such a positive impact in your community near you just was always something that I looked up to. And you're like come. There's a space here for you. You know, and you did some convincing for me to kind of work with you. And then PadSplit felt so natural because, well, I've rented rooms before. As an immigrant, I didn't had a family here, I, so it was harder for me, and I was financially independent from everything, and I couldn't afford it. Right, I didn't had roommates at that time, and I found a room in a family's home. They opened their doors for me, and I lived there for probably a year and a half, almost 2 years. It was a great experience for me, but at the time, that's what I had to do because nothing else was financially affordable for me. So it felt so natural because I've been part of the consumer side, and I understand that in that space in time of my life, I needed that. So it was like a full circle moment for me now being able to provide that solution for others and equally helping investors build their wealth through this amazing strategy. And then working with you is something that I just love doing anyway. So everything was aligned. Everything was aligned for me. Working for PadSplit has been a privilege. It's a company that holds, such a special place in my heart. I love what they stand for. I love what we've accomplished as a team. I just enjoy every single bit of it. So PadSplit felt natural. Talking to investors about this was the most natural conversation. It never felt like I was selling absolutely anything. It's always been a conversation, an education piece. It's never been a please buy this because you need this. It's like, this is the reality. This is the truth. These are the numbers. Why would you not move into this space?
What gives you the comfortability to say it that way? Because out of curiosity, one thing we learned in wholesaling is commission breath.
Yeah.
And so we were taught that you don't push too hard or you don't reek of despair to push people into a situation that doesn't make sense, not only for them or the deal itself. And so because you just want to make a commission. So you're saying that you don't push people because it comes naturally and it's something that you just feel comfortable doing. So what gives you that ability not to push people along just to get a sale?
I think what's happened is that we don't get no's, and I think I kind of briefly mentioned this earlier, but we get the not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. Maybe not this one. Or they find the house and they're like, oh, I ended up flipping it. And it's really because there's a hesitation there. But what I see happen every single time is they'll come back. They come back versus maybe in any other, some other investors might not come back because I didn't offer them a good deal. So they didn't think that I had good acquisitions at that point in time. But I don't have to push anything because, well, I just believe in it so much. And I know what we're doing. I know the positive impact in both sides, right? It's such a win-win situation that it just comes so naturally where I know that investors don't say no. They're like, I'm just going to wait a little longer. And I'm not here to convince you to be wealthy. If you don't want to be wealthy, I can't want it more than you want it when I'm giving you all the tools. So it's up to you to make that step. So I guess the answer is more like, the reason why I don't sell so hard is because it's so natural. And if they don't see it, I can make them see it. Like it's so clear and evident to me.
Have you bumped into any challenges, or what were your early challenges as an account executive in PadSplit?
The early challenges is definitely,
Well, and I'll take a step back.
yeah,
You came into PadSplit
yeah.
as an account executive or
As an
as a
account,
host, or
oh yeah, as an account executive because we did not have properties back in that time.
you had properties. I'll remind you. Remember the advice that I
Did
gave
I?
you early on?
Did I?
You know my advice to you early was,
Did we?
babe, you know the process. We've gone through the process. We have pad splits. Just tell people what it is that you've gone through. Was was a thing because initially,
I feel like you're reminding me now.
I'm trying to remind you,
Uh huh.
but
Uh huh.
we purchased our first few pad splits at that time already. We probably weren't live yet, but I think the early advice was just speak from experience
Right.
because you were getting in your own head.
Oh my God, you're right. I remember. I think we were closing. You're right. I remember now. We closed a property, and then the week after I started. Our first property we closed, and then I started a week after.
Yep.
I guess you're right. You did give me that advice, and I didn't feel comfortable enough yet to speak from experience because I haven't gone through the whole process. But we were not hosts. We owned, properties to make them pot splits. But you're right. To my same previous point, like I was talking from that experience, but from conviction because I was doing this. I believed in it. So it was natural because I was doing this myself because I knew what PadSplit meant financially
Mm-hmm.
for me as an investor.
Yep.
So it was knowing that I was doing it myself, and it was like, you want proof of concept? I'm allocating my dollars into my own investments into doing this same thing that I'm telling you should do.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the product before you're buying it, not to prove you that if I do it, you should do it. I'm telling you, I'm doing this myself as well.
So your early challenges in PadSplit as an account executive now, I'll reiterate because it's not always jump in and you find success in things. You've have found and the connection I'm trying to make is this. In wholesaling you had your early struggles, then you had your successes. In the hedge fund, your early struggles, then you had your successes.
It's kind of like the learning curve.
It is ultimately the learning curve, what it boils down to. But from me witnessing it, I'll speak a little on you. I watched your early struggles within PadSplit. I think it was more mental at this stage because it wasn't anything physical or education because it's literally just adapting something new. But you jumped in and you were in your head. And
Imposter syndrome.
that's the word that popped in my head.
It's imposter syndrome.
Live with that. It's a real thing too.
I think in every stage of it, it's the feeling of being an imposter, even though you are actually doing it.
Even with the podcast,
Yeah,
there's this sense of, what are you doing?
we don't know. We know what we're doing, but
And
at the same time, we're figuring out every single day.
Yep. But I'm very proud of like your process, your progress. I'll connect then your whole story and ask you a question. Where do you get this drive and where do you get this like gusto that you have to push forward, fight, persevere? Like, is there anything that got you to that? Like, what's your motivation? Where in your DNA is this?
I definitely would say this is driven by seeing my mom being such a driving force with everything that she does. As an only child, my mom is a lawyer. She's a lawyer back home. And my parents divorced when I was young. My dad traveled tons. So in a way, my mom raised me by herself. And she worked endless hours to provide for me and for her and give us a comfortable life. We did not live in luxury. We did not live nothing. We had what we needed. You know, working class, but she's just a driving force. And seeing her and every single day, she's definitely my example, what drives me forward, what pushes me into never giving up, into just continuing. Feeling emotional right now.
And it's just you and I.
But yeah, she's definitely been the biggest inspiration. I've seen her create so many different companies successfully. Right? She's been always innovating. Traditionally, as a lawyer, you would probably go into more legislative, more traditional, right, law, and she decided to go for environmental law. So that's kind of ironic that she didn't really allow me to pursue music in a way, because she went with environmental law that's so specific, right? Successfully did great companies in that space. Then she managed so many different companies, and she did a huge twist in her career, which was going from attorney to a builder. With no real estate experience, she completely did a 360 in her professional career. So without me knowing subconsciously, I was already connected to real estate through my mom because she was a builder. And she is still actively doing affordable housing back in Colombia. It's just such a full circle moment. It's one of those things that's always present there for you, but you don't really have that awareness to it. It's a little like out of, I don't even know how to put it in words, but it's a little crazy for sure.
It's poetic.
So she's been my driving force for sure. And I don't know, just feeling like there's no limitation, regardless of your gender, your race. There's just no limitation, because breaking those society barriers is something that my mom has taught me. And she's a huge inspiration and a huge reason why we're here, why I push forward so much. And finding a person like you that understands my drive, my push forward, and drives me even harder, I feel like just has pushed us both even harder.
Well, we're workaholics. It's a problem. We work a lot.
I know.
But with that being said, yeah, I'm proud of you. And yeah, it's good to hear. It's good to, obviously to have the audience hear some of your driving force, and that, you are persevering through in different stages as you level up. And I think a lot of the education pieces, so like I've always been kind of the brute to some degree, where it's I'm going to bulldoze through just off of will. Mm. And then you took a lot of that bulldozing and said, let's step aside from your ego and partner with people. Or, hey, step aside from your ego was, I think, the next moment we went to a Tony Robbins event, and you said, become vulnerable. And then through that was a breakthrough. And then, even moving forward, I might have told you, step aside from your ego, and we're not doing Airbnbs. It was mine to you. Because you were like headstrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's sexy. Hello.
And
it's a wand, like, it's a sexy investment.
Yeah. So we'll hop into...
Let's talk about us.
Yeah, us. how deep on us you want to get?
No, let's roll. Let's talk about ourselves. We met. We are in 2024. Wow, we met 12 years ago. Give or take, like
Yeah, no, it was 12 years ago.
12 years
A
ago.
little shy of 12 years.
Mm-hmm. We were both working retail. You know, as students back then in that time of our lives, that was a good job because it was flexible in the hours. It allowed us to still go to school, generate some income for us to be able to do as young kids, things that we wanted. Concerts, travels, eating out, buying clothes, you know. And we met there. And it was very apparent for us that we had this just instant connection. I always strive to kind of work hard on my English. So I kind of had that always that awareness of, you know, not having English as my first language. So I worked so hard and I don't know. Impress me. God knows.
So,
But we already worked together.
yeah, our background was working together. And so when I was chasing after something different and I wanted to get into real estate, it was her suggestion to talk to a friend of hers and get into joining a team. So I wouldn't probably be in real estate today if it wasn't for, well, it's kind of weird. So I got us into real estate, but you got us to continue to go into real estate. Because if it wasn't for you connecting me, then I would have ran out of money and probably jumped back into retail. So it felt natural to work together. And I think at this point, we're kind of programmed to work together because we've done it now like 5 times. Retail, wholesale.
Why do you feel like it was so easy for you to work with me?
Because you're a driver and a workaholic. Probably. I mean, if I were to sum it up to some degree. And then when you're doing something of passion with someone that you love, then it pulls it out. More than likely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're dropping signs together, you're dropping every sign you drop is a potential deal and a sale, and it's money. So
we were excited for every sign.
We were dropping signs like that. We were building wealth.
Yeah.
So what were some of the most significant challenges you faced as a team, and how did you overcome them?
We faced challenges. Faced challenges of we not having the same goals at certain times. Maybe just kind of we both the aim was the same, right? Build wealth. The approach was different. I think that was one of our biggest challenges. The approach. Because our goal was always the same. So our goals were aligned, but how we were going to tackle this was not always, but was where we kind of had some challenges. So then we realized that I would say we were kind of fighting each other, but there was no need for us to fight each other if the goal was the same. So when we realized it was the problem versus us, not you versus me, I feel we were able to take a step back and be like, wow, we've been kind of wasting time. Because we still want to get to Z, right? So let's not do it separately, or let's not just be so stuck in our own ways, but let's just join our forces.
I agree. And so working with your partner, those types of questions, it's aligning and having the same like end goal, because then you can kind of work backwards. So for us, when we got into wholesaling, they didn't want us to do separate jobs because then we'll have two sides of the business. So we were in sales together, and sales is individual. Like the broker obviously makes money on the sales, but if you're two separate sales agents that are highly driven, you're only as driven as, your result is what you're trying to get. So then you get very competitive. So that wasn't a good situation for us. And then moving along and expanding in that role, um, also still not good. We're not aligned, but we want the fortune. And then we kind of get it right with our own business, but still off because then you're a startup. And I think it wasn't until we really worked on buying our own properties that our goal is to make our portfolio successful. And so when you have now that's your baby and you're acquiring and you're trying to figure out what's the best deal for us, who's the best lender, who's going to do the work, who's going to manage it, who's going to market it, how we're like operating that, then our focus got to that. And then our focus on continuing to build wealth kind of clicked. Even with our roles in day to day, I think it's even easier because, same household. Her income's not my income, my income's not her income, but ultimately at the end of the day, we are working for the same initiatives, and it's to buy more properties. So I think that you setting yourself up for success as a couple to be able to have then different roles and have the same goals and align with the same goals will result to better results than setting yourself up for failures where you're doing the same exact thing and then now you're butting heads. So I think that's the learning that I have gotten working with your partner in the same industry. And I think that same solution goes for just general business partners as well. You don't ever try to get a business partner that does the same exact thing that you do because then you don't complement each other.
Visionary implementer of sorts. Yeah, that's key for us. Understanding that we're both going towards the same goal and understanding that maybe your approach might be good at that moment and allowing me to also kind of lead in that approach in that moment and just understanding that regardless it's the problem versus us instead of you versus me type of situation. How have we evolved working together?
I think we kind of answered that a little bit.
Yeah. We've evolved by understanding our strengths and our weaknesses and allowing each other to flourish in each one of those strengths and weaknesses and knowing when to tap each other in and tell the other person like, hey, you're better at this than me. Or even saying, hey, I need help. You could be great at it, but you could also need some help. Right? So I think that's how we've evolved, like truly understanding that we are a unit and that we are always better and stronger together versus having like different, completely different perceptions. How do we balance our professional and our personal?
I mean, I think this answer would sound a lot better and different in like a year. But currently we do so much. And I mean, do you want to say what we do?
I think it's first and foremost, I think it's really truly hard to have a balance of sort. It's like
because we're business owners. So if you're a business owner, I think that line, like it's not a clock in, clock out thing. So it is greatly different. Ours kind of bleeds through by default. I mean, even within our roles, I think we're salaried. We are salaried. Well, I don't think we're salaried, but we're salaried. So that kind of isn't 9 to 5, and it's not Monday to Friday. Sometimes Sunday to Sunday. And then we're business owners and we have our portfolio and things happen in real estate. An emergency happens on the weekends. An emergency happens at night. And then we also help our clients that reach out to us on holiday for emergencies with their PadSplits. And they have questions. And we have tons of answers. So we tend to make ourselves available. And then also, adding on the podcast to continue to educate more people on the concept of co-living and investment real estate is another thing that we do on our spare time. And then we have obviously our personal lives. So, as to your point you were trying to make earlier, I don't think that there's a legitimate way to fully step away.
Yeah, I like balance is not a thing that is easy to find. And I think that there's no balance without chaos. Like they don't exist without each other. I think we're figuring it out. I think we are in a stage of absolute growth. And this means constant change, constant evolution, constant innovation for us. And we're okay knowing that we're in this stage of our lives right now, where it's demanding, where it's not like we made it. No, we're still climbing. We're still climbing this mountain, and we're going to face challenges, and we're okay with understanding that certain things are taking priority over others. But knowing that the goal is to make now the reverse of prioritizing other things later down the line, because we're making the sacrifice for that thing right now. So we balance understanding that it's a stage that we're in, and we're kind of full forward facing this stage that we're in, this season that we're in, and embracing it fully.
No, that's fairly honest.
Right? And everything will fall into place, but we understand that we are in stage of growth, and for us to get where we want to get to, we have a way to go, and we're making it work. We're figuring it out. We're still figuring it out.
What inspired us to create the Coliving with PadSplit podcast?
All right, you can share some. What inspired us?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll speak for me on this one.
Yeah.
Not get both of us in trouble and to some degrees, but some of my inspirations, because we came from a very closed wholesale operation that we really didn't network out, and information didn't really get in other than what was circulated internally, because of that burger and fries, bit. We have learned a lot in real estate, and we have helped a lot of people. And the concept of the podcast kind of is an evolution of the Facebook group that we created, where we wanted to build community. And we wanted to build community because we wanted some of the good habits of what some of the successful PadSplit hosts were doing in their journeys. So why isn't there a place where someone with 300 doors can't talk to someone with, 5 doors, bedrooms? Why is there not a standardized thing that's out there that connects the bunch? And so the Facebook group was there. It's just that everyone has a Facebook group. And then we thought to ourselves, okay, well, how do you educate people and put a spotlight on their business and what they do on their day-to-day, but then also connect a little bit on what makes them successful as PadSplit hosts? And so we wanted to put a highlight to people who were doing it successfully and not just beating the drum with one property on the platform on a Facebook group. So for me, the concept was, let's highlight and let's put out there for education and to build a tighter knit community some of these successful people that are in industries around us that also do PadSplit, and highlight not only what they do as PadSplit hosts, but also expand on what they do outside of PadSplit, because all that you do cannot just be co-living. And thus came the concept of the Coliving with PadSplit podcast. 2 people who are hosts themselves that own 47 doors of their own and educate hundreds of investors and onboard thousands of properties on a yearly basis, interviewing successful investors that are also PadSplit hosts. And that's, the short end. Short and the long.
That was not short.
But no, I mean that's kind of
not short.
that was kind of the concept that originally came into mind. And that's kind of the long version of it came from wanting to educate more people on good practices.
Ultimately is how to amplify our voices and the connections that we have, because we are surrounded by such incredible investors that are in this space that are doing incredible things, and each one of their stories are so inspiring, so motivating, just so worth of telling the world, that we wanted to create that space to amplify their voices, to help you also in your journey, if you don't know where to start. And really just, how can we continue to help even more people? Right? Because we can only talk to so many people per day on a one-on-one basis. And this is just kind of amplifying that.
Yep.
This is really the reason we're here. We love doing this. And how do we decide on the topics and guests for your podcast episode? We are working with all these investors. Every single person that we have in we've had already in the podcast, and the ones that are coming soon, we've worked with closely. Or we know, well, everybody so far we've worked with closely.
Yep.
And we know they have so much value to add to you. So these are investors, but in a way, they're also our friends. And we decide topics based on their experience, based on what we know that they're good at, based on what we consider could be so valuable to the audience to learn from them.
Absolutely agree. We know people who do more than just PadSplit. They just happen to also do PadSplit.
Right.
I think it's a good story to hear how a wholesaler expands to do storage rentals and buy a ton of storage rentals. How a person expanded from Airbnb to mortgage companies to owning a mortgage company to doing PadSplit loans and presented in front of larger investors nationally. These are all stories, and even the one-offs. Someone who has one property, it was a naysayer, and then went through the process and loves it, and not had any type of problem within their PadSplit, even though that might be rare. But we bring on guests that bring value, that can inspire first-time PadSplit host all the way up to a person that might have a ton of properties that can make an adjustment based off of what someone else is doing in a different market. So we just want to expand on their stories, highlight them and their experiences. And at some point we'll have hosts that we haven't necessarily touched on and educated, but we'll still pull from their experiences so that you can learn and continue to build on your financial freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you share a memorable moment from your podcast that stands out to you? This is a really hard question, because I can have...
We talk about this after every episode too, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
Somewhat.
We've had such great memorable moments in, every single one of our episodes. But I think...
I got one.
Okay. For me, I cannot say a specific person, but just our guest sharing so much of their personal life. So you can understand and you can see that ultimately we're just humans, right? And understand that we all have personal struggles and our personal drives and the reason why, and memorable that we've had a space where they feel comfortable to share that with us is so valuable to me. So I can't say for one specific episode, but I would say in general, just having the space where they feel comfortable to share that, and they've allowed themselves to be vulnerable with us and our audience to share intimately more about themselves.
I'll leave it at that because that was a good answer.
Okay.
No, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right.
Because there's a lot of moments, but you summed it up very well. So.
All right. We got two more. Almost wrapping up.
What do you hope that our listeners take away from each episode of our podcast?
I would say that you can do it. That you can do it and you can start even when you don't believe you can. I just saw this really fun meme today about a day in a real estate investor. And it was showing a person, kind of like you at your first sales job, thinking of wholesaling and doing this jump, but not, you did take the steps, you did take the actions. But so many people are like, I'm going to start doing real estate today. And they read all the books and they listen to all the podcasts and they go to all these classes, but they don't take the actual actions to make real things happen. So I think what I want our listeners to take away is that you can take action. You need to take action, actually. Not that you can, but you need to take action in order for you to be able to now sit in one of these rooms and share your own story in the future. Because I would say every single person that we've interviewed started from not having a background or not coming from parents or a family that were in real estate. Those examples and those stories are way smaller than the opposite. All the amount of people that come into the space with zero background in real estate, that don't have
no one we interviewed
came from it.
Came from real estate.
Yeah, they were not
they
born
might have
in
had
real
a
estate.
Parent that did something that can be considered as investing, but that's like the closest to being real estate investors in their background that I've seen.
Right.
But no one comes from education or wealth that we've interviewed. And it's already been like 16 people.
Correct. So you can do it. You have the tools. It's within you. There's no limitations. And that's what I hope you get out of this. That we are all regular people. Yes, we, of course, have things that push us forward, but so can you. And that's what I hope every single one of you take away from listening.
Yep, I agree. Demystify the mystique of being an investor with a lot of properties, owning a portfolio, owning one property. It can be challenging. It could be hard. It is a process. It's not, given to you at all, but by taking action, all these people have gotten to, at the very least, to sit on the couch, one PadSplit. And even with that one change, they've been able to change their financial life to various degrees. And so everything starts with us. Like, we have taken action. We have gone through the hard steps. And then now we're here to educate, and to pass knowledge and to bring on people so that you can now see all these different people who weren't born into wealth and that have gone through the same process that you're going through.
Right.
And making it now relatable to where now you can see, because we're not all coming from the same places, but we all have gotten to some degree, some forms of success. And so you can pick whether from our story, from one of our guests' story, little tidbits that help move you along in your process. And if you still have questions, obviously feel free to reach out, but the goal is that you are able to take something from here to now take actionable steps to change your life and your family's trajectory.
Legacy, legacy, legacy. That's what we're here for.
So how do you see the podcast evolving in the future, and what are our goals for it?
We want to interview some big people in real estate. Like, I want us to be able to get to a point where, and I know this will happen, co-living is going to get so big that even real estate moguls will talk about it. It cannot be avoided. And I think seeing some of those bigger people come into our show in our space it's going to be a really good thing for us to achieve, essentially. How else do I see us growing? more views, more downloads, more platforms, more rankings, of course. But more than anything, just more value to you. How do you see us evolving?
Well, we're already seeing the evolution happen.
Yeah.
Crazy enough.
Yeah.
We just started. We have recordings for about the rest of the year.
Mm.
We are changing from bi-weekly to weekly.
Mm.
We are also probably going to do virtual podcasts as well as in-person podcasts. So that will allow us to reach out to more experiences in different markets. I mean, it's cool. We have literal guests coming up that are flying in from other places that are going to sit on our couch and, give their experience, share their struggles and the positive stuff also. Everyone wants to hear a success story, but sharing the struggles is being very vulnerable. So we have people come in from far to share. But then now we're going to be able to access more from different places and do it virtually. And now include not just hosts, but vendors that are also in the front lines of the PadSplit life. There's investors that have 300 doors, but there's property management that might have 500 doors. And so we're going to now interview them so that they can provide just as much value as a host would. And we're going to continue to expand on that. And so how do I see the podcast changing? You might see a new intro. You might see more guests. You might see more high-level guests. There's some high-level people that are investing into PadSplit.
Better equipment, more cameras, better editing.
We're going to have multiple cameras, more angles.
Hey, we'll have more budget for it. So that's why your shares and your likes and your subscribes are so important, because you're only helping us grow. So we can provide, better quality for you at the end of the day.
More value and more content so that you can continue to arm yourself with more tools that can help you grow. So that's how I feel like our expansion is going to happen. Maybe some live events. Don't know. Maybe some, if there's a PadSplit convention, maybe you'll see us on a panel. But
PadSplit Con 2025.
Let's go. And shorts, probably more shorts coming up. But other than that, it's going to be the same us, more properties, more guests, more information. And
maybe a new chair for me.
Probably with the intro, we'll end up having more chairs.
I want a new chair. Anyways, guys.
It was fun. Maybe we'll do a continuation at some point, but we do enjoy a lot more than we thought we'd enjoy interviewing guests and bringing value. And we want to obviously continue to do so. We appreciate your time. This one's a more lengthy interview, and it could have obviously gone longer, but we don't want the focus to necessarily be on us. We want to continue to drive the value to you and be there in your growth. So,
and if you made it this long, thank you for sticking around.
And if you're a PadSplit host and you want to share your experiences.
That's right. I was going to say that before, but yeah, thank you for reminding me. If you want to be a part of if you want to be in this couch with us in one of our next episodes, just let us know. Reach out to us. Sorry.
Should I cut that later? I'll probably keep it.
Let it be. Reach out to us. Okay. So if you want to be in our couch and share your story in the co-living space, you know how to reach us. Find us on social media. We are Ray Orianna on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube. DM us, and we can schedule something. But thank you for sticking all the way around to this time on this episode on the podcast, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for being here.
I love you.
I love you too.
And thank you for sharing with us.
You too. It was a good episode.
It was. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the Coliving with PadSplit podcast hosted by Ray and Orianna Nunez. For more exclusive content and community updates, join our Facebook group and follow us on all social media platforms. Stay tuned for more episodes.